6 Premier League titles,
Please welcome the champions of England, the Premier League champions,
Guardiola rightly leads the line, rightly takes the applause, makes the salute.
1 Champions League.
Yes! And they've done it! They've done it! Manchester City have done it! Once, twice, 3 times a champion! Champions of Europe finally! History made in Istanbul! The treble complete! The greatest story in club history has an ending! And what a final chapter!
20 trophies, 1 decade of dominance.
It's been a decade there, it's been so much success for him, but there are reports tonight saying that he will leave at the end of the season after the final game on Sunday.
9 years, it's a very long time. I would say that I leave as a Man City supporter. I have so many good memories with this club.
It's been so special. Everything comes to an end and I wish it'd go on forever, but I know that that's not a possibility. It's tough, but at the same time, I can look back on the 10 years and I'm so proud of what I've achieved and what I've done here and the memories that I've got. Oh, what more can I say but thank you, and I'll cherish the moments forever.
And now it has all come to an end.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for trusting me. Thank you for pushing me, thank you for loving me. It has been so f***ing fun. Love you all.
The moment that Man walked out of the Etihad, time itself seemed to freeze. Before the match had even begun, Bernardo Silva was already in tears. John Stones stood at the microphone, choked with emotion, his voice breaking halfway through. And then all 4 stands rose to their feet at once, thunderous applause echoing across the cathedral of football as the velvet curtain fell on one of the greatest chapters in modern history. 1 manager, 2 players, 3 legends, an era of greatness had officially come to an end. But right now, history no longer matters. The real question is, what happens next to Manchester City? Who will stay and fight? Who will run? And how can Manchester City possibly survive after losing the master architect behind an entire empire? Stay with me, because the answer is far more complicated than you think.
Do you think the same thing that happened to Liverpool when Klopp left is going to happen to City when Pep leaves? Or has the decline happened already?
It's going to be tough for City when he changes the manager. It's going to be high. The expectation doesn't change even though Pep's leaving. You know, all of a sudden, the hierarchy at Man City aren't going to go, well, Pep's leaving, so we don't mind if we don't do that well this year because we're rebuilding or we've got a new manager. That's not how it works. Man City will absolutely expect to be challenging for the Premier League and the Champions League. So it's more likely that it doesn't work than it carries on, put it that way.
Pep, Bernardo, Stones. Their era of dominance is officially over. Forget all the noise and debates for a second. Look at the only thing that cannot be denied, the data. Don't listen to what people say. Look at what they achieved. Back in 2016, Pep's Manchester City was merely a wealthy powerhouse struggling to establish itself. They won a few trophies here and there, but always fell back into the same cycle. By European standards, they were still painfully ordinary.
The challenge is play as best as possible. Always will be our titles or our good successful will be consequence in our way we're going to play. And I want to convince these guys to play as best as possible.
and try the people who, not just Manchester City fans, of course, but all the football fans in the world can be proud to see us how we play.
And now, a decade later, they have collected 20 major trophies, 6 Premier League titles, 1 Champions League crown, alongside a mountain of domestic silverware. The peak came on May 16th at Wembley, where another domestic double was completed after a 1-0 victory over Chelsea, sealed by a moment of brilliance from Antoine Semenyo.
Now Haaland. Bit of menace now from Manchester City. Bernardo Silva for Haaland. Semenyo! Oh, what a finish that is! Feels like Chelsea are running out of chances. They've run out of time. The departing Stones and Silva lead the way. Manchester City's year as they lift the FA Cup.
This is no longer normal football. This is a level of supremacy that, throughout the entire Premier League era, only Sir Alex Ferguson ever achieved. And just like the legendary figure at Old Trafford, Pep knows exactly when it's time to turn around and walk away.
We work, we suffer, we fought, and we did things our own way. Our way. Hard work comes in many forms. So as many time comes to an end, be happy. Oasis are back again. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for trusting me. Thank you for pushing me. Thank you for loving me.
But Pep did not walk through that door alone. In less than a month, an entire legendary core suddenly collapsed. First came Bernardo Silva, 9 years of service, 460 appearances, 19 major trophies, and the presence of a true leader. The very player Pep once described by saying, "Bernardo is the most perfect player I've ever coached."
Oh my God. Bern is my weakness. He knows exactly what we need, right? To play better, fluid. But having a special sense of compete, sense of play, and Benny has the incredible attribute in the bad moments make a step up. That what the fight. So there are players can play in everywhere, but a few players can play in Bernabeu, Camp Nou, Milan, Liverpool. There's few players. There are players. They are born to play in the biggest stages in the way you play for life or death, and Bern is one of them.
Then came John Stones, a decade of loyalty, arriving from Everton in 2016 for £47.5 million, making him the most expensive defender in Premier League history at the time. And then Pep completely redefined his role, transforming him into a genuine midfielder while still on the pitch. And God, it worked. It worked beyond anyone's imagination.
He gets it moving quickly. It's Stones! Oh!
City won a free kick because of that foul on Haaland. The delivery is put against the post by Stones.
But amid the storm of farewells, the internet suddenly resurfaced one detail that left the football world laughing and heartbroken at the same time. Bernardo Silva once named his dog John, simply to honour his closest brother inside the dressing room. Bro literally named his dog after his teammate. That goes far beyond a normal professional relationship. That's family. And that is exactly why this farewell feels heavier than any blockbuster transfer saga ever could. Manchester City are not just losing elite superstars, they are losing their soul and the very core values that define the club.
It's the football, it's the passion for the game. Man City truly is a family, and it's going to be difficult to say goodbye to that. So for sure the Etihad Stadium is the thing that I'm going to miss the most in Manchester.
Pep Guardiola, what has he taught you about yourself as a player?
Yeah, he changed for sure the way that I see football. Also 9 years is a very long time, so all the experience that we had with him were crazy in all senses. He's a very intense manager, a very demanding manager. He's the reason that now other teams are trying to copy his style, and because it works, they see it works, they want to do the same. It happened in Germany as well when he was there, and you see that the people that are around him tend to become very successful. So that's a strong sign that the message and the information that he gives you is quite good.
Trophies will eventually gather dust, but an ideology? That becomes immortal. All right, let's get tactical for a second, because this is the key point that most people outside often miss when talking about Pep. This man didn't just teach Manchester City how to win, he completely redefined how English football is played. Terms like positional play, high press, inverted fullbacks, or goalkeeper build-up, back in 2016, they sounded like some bizarre secret code in England. But look around now, from title contenders to relegation fighters, every single Premier League team is trying to become a copy of that system.
Pep changed the football in England. It was for the best in terms of what we're seeing right now. All titles and all what he did, that was crazy. John Stones in the middle of the park where he was a defender, getting Edison was capable of putting out the pressure. Everything was amazing. It changed the mentality of the English football, the thing that we all love, the verticality of it, the pressure, and of course because of the refereeing right now, you cannot touch a player anymore. So the aggressiveness and the good aggressiveness that we used to see in England doesn't exist anymore. The English football is like the others.
If you need living proof of Pep's legacy, just look at John Stones. He was moulded into something entirely new. A hybrid role, a false defender. Nobody believed such an unconventional system could survive under the suffocating pressure of the Bernabeu, or in a Champions League final, until Stones stepped into the spotlight in Istanbul. After that magical night, Sky Sports wrote, "He completed more dribbles in a Champions League final than anyone, since Lionel Messi in 2015. Just stop for a second and think about that. Those are words being used to describe a man whose original job was simply to defend.
I'm not sure that Ferguson impacted the style of football in the same way that Guardiola has. I don't think that teams, almost philosophically altered their approach to the game, going from the Premier League down to League Two. Just try and play out from the back and try and emulate some of the innovation that Guardiola brought to English football. I'm not sure that happened with Ferguson, and so from that point of view, I think Guardiola has had more of an impact. Everybody wanted to be like him. Everybody wanted to play like the Pep Guardiola style of play.
An earthquake. No exaggeration whatsoever. That was the exact word the English media used to describe this collapse. And emotionally, the weight of it feels even heavier than that. Pep Guardiola's Manchester City dressing room was a temple of perfection. The players didn't simply walk onto the pitch to win 3 points. They wanted to dominate through the purest and most superior form of football imaginable. But when the master architect walks away, the very foundation of that culture begins to crack apart. You cannot simply hire another manager and expect this billion-dollar machine to keep functioning as if nothing happened. The successor, Enzo Maresca, a verbal agreement already in place on a 3-year deal. On paper, this is far from an unfamiliar name. Maresca was Pep's right-hand man during the legendary 22-23 treble-winning season. He guided Leicester back to the Premier League, then went on to win both the Conference League and the 2025 Club World Cup with Chelsea. He understands the winning DNA of this club better than almost anyone. But football has one brutal truth. Maresca may understand every tactical movement on Pep's chessboard, yet players do not run themselves into exhaustion because of tactics alone. They fight because they believe in Pep Guardiola, the person, and belief is something that can never be transferred through a contract clause.
Maresca's never been anybody that I've really respected as a top manager. I think, Leicester fans used to moan about him, and at Chelsea it was a little bit mixed. I can see why they're going for him. I don't think it's the most glamorous choice, but I think it's somebody that's worked at the club before. Man City do like all that sort of stuff. I think the big question is, how do we react as the rest of the Premier League? Is there an opportunity here? I'm speaking about it on the United Stand this morning about Elliot Anderson. I think he's been a favourite to go to Man City. We now know Pep won't be there. Does that open up doors? Because if Pep's there, he's going to Man City, isn't he? If he's not there and he comes to Man United, that's a big clue that, the loss of Pep does make Man City not as strong. But look, the big question I suppose for myself is, I said Man City are going to win the league next year. Do I think they're going to win the league next year without Pep? That's probably changes my opinion. I think it opens up the door, and I think that's the best thing I can say. I said a few weeks ago, Man City will win the league next year on the assumption that Pep Guardiola would be here. I'm not saying that anymore. Saying that we're going to win it next year with Pep is based on, strong evidence. Saying they're going to win the league next season with Maresca, I mean, that's a punt.
Every name, every question, and a future filled with uncertainty. Now the transfer storm officially begins sweeping across the club. Let's go through them one by one. The first name, Phil Foden. To put it bluntly, Foden is Pep's creation. He joined the academy at the age of 10 and was the one player Pep absolutely refused to send out on loan because he knew he possessed a generational talent. That gamble transformed an English kid into a global superstar, a Ballon d'Or contender just 2 years ago. But this season, everything suddenly collapsed. Just one goal contribution in his last 25 appearances. From standing on top of the football world, Foden's decline became so dramatic that the English media openly said, he looks like a player who has completely lost his soul and confidence.
Phil Foden, my goodness, the fall from grace.
He doesn't get picked for Man City. He's had a massive fall off. No one's talking about Phil Foden. Absolutely not. This was Paul Pogba. Oh, it'd be front page news. He's gone from being one of the most talented English players to a bench warmer in a season where Man City might win 3 trophies.
Ignore all the criticism on the pitch though. Foden just delivered his strongest response in the last place anyone expected, at the negotiating table. A new contract until 2030 is reportedly close to being signed, keeping Etihad's golden boy at the club for at least 4 more years. But the most fascinating detail happened behind the scenes. Foden has partnered with super agent Rafaela Pimenta, the mastermind behind Erling Haaland's monster deals, to prepare the next phase of his career. He went full CEO mode on his career. That is not the behaviour of a mentally broken player. That is the calculated move of someone who knows exactly how valuable he truly is. But here's the million-dollar question. The contract may be signed, but does Foden genuinely want to stay? Or is this merely a clever delaying tactic? A way for him to buy time and see whether Enzo Maresca truly has what it takes before making the final judgment on his future. Don't be naive. In modern football, a signature on paper means almost nothing anymore. Sign the contract this year, submit a transfer request the next. We've seen this story far too many times before. If Foden's future is a question mark, Rodri's situation is a full-scale crisis. We are talking about the king of midfield, the man who controlled Manchester City's entire era of dominance. But the connection between him and the club has never looked more fragile. His contract only runs until 2027, and a lucrative offer presented back in April still remains untouched. Fabrizio Romano has already confirmed it. There is serious tension behind the negotiations. And in the shadows, Real Madrid have already started moving. Multiple reports suggest the Spanish giants are making serious preparations for the 2024 Ballon d'Or winner. Faced with the possibility of losing his favourite student to a direct rival, Pep Guardiola responded to the media with nothing more than a mysterious smile. A smile that said absolutely everything.
First, Manchester City midfielder Rodri has cast doubt over his long-term future at the club, saying he'd like to return to La Liga one day and that he'd be open to a move to Real Madrid, despite having played for City rivals Atletico. Speaking to Spanish radio station Onda Cero, Rodri said, "I'd like to return to Spain, obviously. For me, La Liga is where I started. You can't turn down the best clubs in the world. They have a fan base that really goes all out for them. And for me, the Bernabeu is always incredible, a stadium that's very imposing. I have 1 year left on my contract. There will come a point where we'll have to sit down and talk."
Manchester City now stand at a 3-way crossroads, lose him for free in 2027, cash in this very summer, or somehow turn the situation around with a brand new deal. Sadly for the citizens, the best case scenario is also the most unrealistic one right now. And if the worst does happen, if Rodri walks away, Etihad are reportedly ready to trigger a crazy replacement plan. Enzo Fernandez, Chelsea's midfield star, and one of the untouchable centerpieces under Enzo Maresca. And now the bigger picture finally becomes clear. Appointing Enzo Maresca was never just a simple managerial replacement. It was a chess move made 2 steps ahead by Manchester City's hierarchy. They chose Maresca because they want both the brain and the new midfield nucleus of the next empire.
Exclusive from Florian Plettenberg, Enzo Fernandez is one of Manchester City's desired transfer targets for the summer. Strongly wanted by Enzo Maresca. Initial talks behind the scenes have already taken place. The two Enzos share a top and very trusting relationship. This is a given. We saw this at Chelsea. Enzo Fernandez was reciprocating things very well with Enzo Maresca. That wasn't a secret.
Erling Haaland, the one they cannot lose. If the previous names represented cracks in the foundation, Haaland leaving would represent the complete collapse of an entire dynasty. At just 25 years old, the Norwegian giant has become the undisputed dominant force of English football. But a dark shadow now hangs over his future at the Etihad. a £175 million release clause set to become active this summer. An astronomical figure for ordinary clubs, but a bargain for predators like Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. They are patiently waiting for a single nod of uncertainty.
Erling Haaland to Real Madrid. A transfer that will shock the world. The Premier League's most feared striker is back on Los Blancos' radar, with the Spanish giants on the verge of a revolution. Erling Haaland is the dream replacement. Imagine Haaland and Mbappe leading Madrid's next Galactico era. It sounds invincible.
City's board fully understand the danger. They are doing everything possible, even turning the dressing room into a web of strategic connections by allowing Phil Foden to align with Haaland's representative. They want Haaland to understand one thing: he is the new throne of this club. But when Pep Guardiola leaves, when loyal generals like Bernardo, Stones and De Bruyne slowly disappear, one by one, will Haaland truly want to carry the ruins of an empire all by himself? Or will he choose to walk away in pursuit of an even grander destiny elsewhere? From Haaland, let's look at the man currently trapped beneath that enormous shadow. Arriving at the Etihad in early 2026 for a blockbuster fee, Omar Marmoush quickly discovered the brutal reality. Competing against a monster like Haaland for the number 9 role was practically impossible. A major star wasting away on the bench. Barcelona, Dortmund, and Inter have already signalled their willingness to rescue him. This is the perfect definition of a wrong club, right player, the right talent, but completely the wrong environment. Then there's Joško Gvardiol, perhaps Pep's greatest tactical masterpiece. He transformed a raw centre-back into an unpredictable attacking weapon on the flank, pure footballing sorcery. But once Pep leaves, a new system could suffocate the very role that made Gvardiol special. Real Madrid understand that perfectly. They are waiting patiently for instability at the Etihad before attempting to bring one of the world's best defenders to the Bernabeu. But the domino effect doesn't only threaten the superstars or blockbuster signings, it also reaches the quiet soldiers of the Etihad. Nathan Ake, Pep's man, not City's man. This is a story purely about loyalty. Ake devoted years of his career to Manchester City because of his absolute loyalty to Pep Guardiola. And once Pep leaves, the biggest reason for Ake to stay leaves with him. A departure suddenly feels inevitable. Bournemouth, his former home, could offer him peace again, while several European giants are already lining up, waiting for his decision. And then comes another tragedy altogether, a young talent who stayed, but whose entire system no longer exists. Rico Lewis. Rico Lewis is a Pep Guardiola creation, not a Manchester City creation. The role he currently plays, an inverted fullback drifting into midfield like a deep-lying playmaker, is one of the most complex and outrageous innovations in modern football. And it worked perfectly simply because Pep understood it better than anyone else on the planet. But under Maresca, without the mad scientist running the laboratory anymore, Rico Lewis could very easily be dragged back into becoming just another traditional fullback. Ordinary, generic, and that would be one of the greatest wastes of talent the Etihad has ever seen. And to close this chain reaction of chaos, we arrive at the final chapter, where two names currently have the most predictable destinies at the Etihad. Tijani Reinders and James Trafford. Quick and simple endings. For Reinders, the start was promising, but his performances have become increasingly inconsistent. Now ask yourself one simple question. If Enzo Fernandez arrives as part of the plan mentioned earlier, where exactly does Reinders fit into the squad? The bench is the only realistic answer. And as for James Trafford, he was never truly going to become Manchester City's number 1 goalkeeper. But the good news for him is that his market value remains incredibly high, with Spurs, Brighton and Liverpool all reportedly very interested. And no conspiracy theories, no drama, this is probably the simplest equation to solve on this entire insane list. Manchester City are now heading into the most complicated summer transfer window in the club's history, after already losing Kevin De Bruyne, Kyle Walker and Ederson last summer. They are now also losing Pep Guardiola, Bernardo Silva and John Stones. The backbone, the strongest structural core of an entire dynasty, is being dismantled completely within just 12 months. So what exactly will Enzo Maresca inherit? A Haaland surrounded by uncertainty, a Foden suffering the worst form of his career, a Rodri seemingly waiting for the perfect moment to walk away, and an entire dressing room full of players staring at one another, silently wondering, is anyone even staying here anymore? This is no longer just a transfer market issue. It is a psychological crisis, the kind no amount of money or signings can instantly repair. Because a winning culture is something you can never simply buy. But to be fair, Maresca is not some unknown figure. He understands the system. He has already won trophies. And Manchester City still possess more than enough financial power to launch a complete rebuild. The potential signing of Enzo Fernandez from Chelsea would be a statement signing, a ruthless declaration of a new era of ambition. The Etihad still stands. The endless wealth of the Abu ownership is still there. And Erling Haaland's goals have not disappeared. However, history has taught us one brutal lesson. Behind every glorious dynasty comes a terrifying period of emptiness. Manchester United spent more than a decade trying to rediscover themselves after Alex Ferguson. Liverpool needed a painful transitional year after Klopp. Even Bayern Munich required several seasons to redefine their identity after Pep left. So what about Manchester City after the Pep Guardiola era? Nobody knows. Absolutely nobody knows the answer. And that is exactly why this story is so fascinating to watch. If you enjoy our video, don't forget to hit like to help this video reach to other football lovers, and hit the subscribe button to follow for more interesting videos about football stories. See you in the next video.